Good morning, listeners and viewers. This is the King's Speech. Have you seen that movie, Jeff?
When he stutters.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I have.
it's a good movie, a great movie. Anyway, gosh, it's Friday. You're listening to Ammar and
Jaff.
live on our weekly radio show right here on Spice FM.
Each week we'll try and bring some views, news, and one or two clues from the business world.
Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities.
We'll be talking shop quite literally, not just corner shops. Whether you're looking to start a business, have an existing business, or you just want to talk business, we can help.
We can help. We can help. We do help. It's always struggling with this device. Here we go. Yeah. Um, Let me hit share a screen and push some buttons, do some stuff. But gosh, Jeff, feels as if the routine hasn't been as great, has it? As in the last, I suppose, couple of months, it feels as if here we are on the
Yeah,
12th of April.
yeah. I think as we say each year, the year just flies so quickly. I think if you
Mm.
lose a day and you're out of sync with your routine, then all of a sudden maybe it's the next day or the next day, and next thing you know, a whole week has gone, and then you need to get back into that routine, and it's a challenge. But I think it's all a matter of that discipline, and obviously with Ramadan for that whole month, it does affect um, your daily routine because it's a month of worship, and most definitely there is that extra bit of focus on that, which is discipline within it in itself. But I think it does affect some other things, in terms of your training regime and A, B, C, and D. So, but I think it's a matter of trying to get back into that routine again.
Yeah. Um, anyway, Eid Mubarak to all of our listeners and followers. Followers.
Mm. Yeah.
Everyone celebrating Eid. I think it's uh, I think it is a great. It was lovely to see you. Thank you ever so much for your
Oh, it's nice to have
kind
you.
consideration. And we had a wonderful, wonderful day. And for those who are unaware, there were three particular um, celebrations across a variety of um, religions. So, arguably, the um, second and third largest religions in the world. Um, did you know that, Jeff? The
What's the biggest religion? Is it still Christianity?
Yeah. Yeah. So
But I think,
and
and then Christianity, then Islam. Is that correct?
yeah,
And then third one is
Hinduism.
okay. So it's not Judaism.
No, 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 no. So the top one, if you is Christianity, and
But Amar, is
understandably,
that bringing all the different groups of Christianity together? I'm presuming, like Protestant,
like
Catholic,
like what?
Orthodox.
As in, I think they were all. It's like any religion. There's a variant, isn't there? There's
Mm,
variances
yeah.
um, of religion, but ultimately, Christianity, at well over 30% of the global population, Christianity is a religion that resonates with over 2 billion believers. The core of the belief, despite the glaring differences between Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox. So it brings all of those together, revolves around the first century figure that is Jesus, Prophet Isa, salam, peace be upon him, of Nazareth, as an Abrahamic religion. Christians claim a belief in a singular God who represents themselves through three identities, which are Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God the Father, is how they describe him. But and that's the distinct difference. Another essential aspect is the death and resurrection of Jesus, peace be upon him, in which humanity is allowed to repent of all misdeeds and eventually spend the afterlife with their beloved deity. The philosophical values and codes of Christianity have been influential enough to form the backbone of Western institutions, despite a growing acceptance of secularism. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think the Ten Commandments helped inform the law and order and everything else. So that's quite interesting. Islam, uh, most active towards the end of the 6th century, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or peace be upon him, is celebrated by Muslims today for founding the religion of Islam. Roughly 1.8 billion followers populate the world, the majority of which are spread between Northern Africa, West Asia, and Indonesia. The Prophet desired to repair the Abrahamic religions, which he believed to be corrupted, um, which is quite interesting. Islam is marked by its adherence to discipline, in which abstinence from worldly behaviors, as well as observance of daily rites, is rigorously demanded. Notable historic discoveries have come from Islamic institutions in the fields such as algebra, surgery, architecture, and even coffee. The two main branches of Islam that cohabitate the Muslim world are Sunni and Shia, which are said to have been divided 1400 years ago over an issue of succession. Interesting.
Hmm.
And then the third one is Hinduism. The origin of Hinduism, a religion with 1.1 billion followers, is difficult
Really?
to pin down.
Traffic?
Yeah, let's see. Well, if you think it's probably become a bit more prevalent in the last um, however many years in India. Officially, but it's interesting, began is difficult to pin down because it began as an amalgamation of different beliefs. Officially formed between 2300 BC and 1500 BC, the Indus Valley near modern day Pakistan is the location in which it blossomed. Typically thought of as the religion with 33 million gods. Did
33
you get?
million gods. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Typically thought of as the religion with 33 million gods. The majority of Hindus worship one god alone, although they accept the existence of other gods. Core values are ones such as karma and samsara. Karma dictates that the moral sum of the deeds we produce will be returned to us eventually through consequence or reward. And samsara is a model for the cyclical nature of life, symptom of which is reincarnation. Historical contributions to the world include mathematics, as well as astronomy and yoga. Nice.
Yeah, good.
Uh, and then the following that is Buddhism, and then there is Shinto, and then
What's the
there
numbers of
is,
Buddhism around the world? We've got the
sorry,
figures. What's the number of Buddhists that there are around the world?
Buddhism, a prince who renounced his wealth to pursue wisdom. The Buddha is an eclectic figure from the 5th century BC who brought together many different beliefs in order to develop a revolutionary philosophy on human identity and purpose. The goal is to achieve an enlightenment called nirvana through meditation, kindness, and hard work. Values revolve around the absence of an essential self, impermanence, and the reality that life is suffering. Therefore, a primary aim for mankind is the elimination of suffering in all its forms. The orange tunic that the monks famously adorn represents a fire that burns away impurities. Two different sects exist: the Theravada Buddhists and the East Asian Buddhists, which differ in their selection of texts. At 500 million followers, Buddhism has been lauded for its effective use of an egalitarian, anyway, easy for me not to pronounce, egalitarian philosophy that has worked to dismantle caste systems worldwide. And I quite like the whole feeling I think you get through Buddhism and Buddhists. They're very peaceful. I mean, all religions allegedly believe in peace, but Buddhists generally wear the orange thobes. They play the drums and they play the triangle and the cymbals, and it's like it's a wonderful feeling. I think it's quite joyous to see them, and the fact that they sit and meditate and believe in one and wholeness and things like that. I think it's a lovely thing to do. And it's not dissimilar to a lot of religions where actually meditation comes through your devotion to God or whatever your belief, whoever the ultimate being is the thing. So yeah, and in the last couple of weeks, and tomorrow, it is Vasaki. So we will see the start of Vasaki, which is more to do from the Sikh religion, and why won't it stop sharing? Why is it not? Has it stopped sharing my screen, Jeff, or not?
Um, I'm not on that.
Hello, are you there? Um, yeah. So AI companion summary. Yeah. Okay. So, Vasaki, Eid al-Fitr comes after, and there were some really interesting facts about Eid al-Fitr that I read out last week, Jeff, when you weren't here once again, which was interesting. And then there is Ram Navami, which is the Hindu festivals. So, how was Ramadan?
It was good, Amar. It was yeah, it was a lot. I like it because obviously there's a discipline element, but it's self-imposed diet, which is good. I think it just gives your organs a rest. I think there's been so much study done at the moment of intermittent fasting and the benefits of all of that. So to be able to do that with a spiritual reason, and the fact that you have to do it, just really, it's a really good thing because you obviously get all the benefits of that, and my body does feel lighter. I feel there was some aches and pains and maybe some inflammation in certain parts within that hopefully have healed, and physically and mentally, hopefully, I think I'm feeling better for it. Lost 5 kilos. which
which is amazing.
is
Yeah,
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
But I think the key is to continue some of that. So I'm going to try and cut out 100% cut out sugars and maybe even coffees, and get onto 1 or 2 little teas, and just keep it at that. Maybe skip a breakfast. Just have 2 meals, have a lunch and a dinner. And I think that would hopefully be a nice change if I'm able to maintain that discipline, and train 5 times a week. And I think that would be a good start if I could do all of that.
I think it'd be yeah, if you can't maintain it, and that's the whole point. It's not about changing, everything you do overnight. It's
Yeah.
about maintaining. 30 days is an adequate amount of time for a habit to form. So
Mm.
I'm desperate for some stability, some normality, and get back into some rhythm. Is what I'm desperate to do, and I'm quite looking forward to starting, next week, the that routine. I think it's very much your diet, because even though I've continued to train 5 days whenever I can, pre-Ramadan and whatever else, it's very much your diet, because you find yourself eating probably not the healthiest,
Yeah,
and
it's difficult, isn't
things
it?
like that.
It's difficult because, especially leading up, well, especially on Eid and maybe, even yesterday, the chefs, people at work were bringing in food from their house to share with the team members. And
Right.
all of a sudden, there's like a plate of food that's just arrives on your desk when you haven't, it's just politeness, isn't it? But then I'm thinking here, but what about my 6-pack?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it was a great. It's good that people have focused. It was quite sad to see people fasting, and those in particularly starving to death as well, in various places and spaces. There's still significant conflict going on in Gaza and Sudan as well, where Muslims continue to be um, persecuted or whatever that is. I find that quite interesting. Obviously, that we have to have a balanced view on everything, but my interpretation of fighting or war would be that two people or two parties are fighting each other, or there's like a war. Like, for example, if I was to describe Ukraine and Russia, they are both bombing each other. There's people on the front line. There's a physical front line, and there's like, them soldiers are fighting them, and them soldiers are fighting them. And I I must confess and profess that I try not to have a public view on these things, because anyway, and certainly on radio we need to maintain Ofcom's regulation and such like. However, I find it difficult somewhat to understand how, if it's just one party killing another, how that's a fight or a war.
Well, I think
There's must be something that I'm missing, and I'm wholly uneducated, and I apologize for being so.
well, I'm not going to apologize. Obviously, I respect that there's certain things. Well, you shouldn't have to if there is freedom of speech, which we are so hung up on, then it's interesting in the context of freedom of speech. Then you have rules from Ofcom where you can't say certain things. So that there
No, I think
is
no,
quite.
just to be clear, sorry, Jeff, just to be clear, and apologies for interrupting you here. Um,
uh,
just to be clear, there aren't any restrictions on freedom of speech that I'm aware of. It is more that anything controversial or political,
mhm,
anything that could be interpreted or misinterpreted by a party, so
mhm.
anything that could cause offence or is offensive or
Well, I'm
divisive needs to be
fine.
balanced.
I
Needs to be
mean,
balanced.
yeah, of course, fair enough. I mean, obviously, I think the only simple point that I would like to make is what's absolutely baffling to me is I remember listening to Tony Benn many years ago, and he said that look, the UN has been formed, and that's going to be the peacekeeping kind of body that's going to hopefully ensure that there's peace around the world for generations to come. So, the United Nations, you must also question the ability to be able to implement peace in the world,
Mm,
because recently they voted in for a ceasefire, and it was one of the very first times that even the US didn't veto the ceasefire. But
yeah.
then that ceasefire isn't being followed because the war is ongoing and the bombing is ongoing. And I'm just a bit baffled as to how does that mean that the UN's power is actually diminished or diminishing? And does that mean that tomorrow you've set the precedent where you could implement a ceasefire, but then if those particular countries decide not to just not to follow it, then you're setting a precedent that that's okay. So that's one point I would just like to make, which I'm a bit confused about. The other issue is I was led to believe and understood that having an embassy in a foreign country, it's effectively you have you have all of the protection from all of the conventions, from the Geneva Conventions, UN rules or regulations, whatever it is, that no one can actually go and attack your embassy because it's effectively attacking your country. But
Mm.
there's been the Iranian embassy in Syria has been bombed by the Israelis, but then no one seems to be, apart from the Chinese and the Russians, no one seems to be coming out and condemning that. So is that also setting a precedent that bombing other countries' embassy is now okay? So these things are a bit confusing, because if you have international law and order, I don't think any country should be bigger than what the law and order is, and it should be, you know, unilaterally followed by everybody. So you can't have one nation that feels, oh, well, I'm bigger than what the international law is, because then that means that the international law is not as strong and as effective as it should be. So that those are my points. And who's gonna? I thought the UN was the body that was gonna ensure that international order is being followed by all the countries around the world.
Simply put, um, I think all of the points that you made are incredibly valid. They're very reasonable, and the vast majority. What's interesting is the vast majority of people that I talk to, communicate with, all find this situation abhorrent. They are wholly against the use of arms and arming any country that is killing young people and aid workers and but and equally it's quite sad. What's particularly sad is that if you live in Israel, and I have I come across a number of people from Israel who disagree with what's going on. So this isn't the universal acceptance by every single Jewish person that what's going on is right. Um, yeah, it's these decisions are being made without really proper consideration. And um, it's just incredibly sad that some 30 odd thousand coming on to 40,000 now. Innocent people have been killed, but over 1.5 million people displaced. 1.5 million people. The population of Newcastle is 275,000.
Yeah.
1.5 million people. 5 times that the size of the population of Newcastle has been displaced. They have nowhere to go. They don't have any food. They don't have any drinking water. They don't have any roofs over their heads. Their houses have been bombed. They don't have insurance. No one's going to turn around and pay, the comforts that we accept in this. Anyway, the reason why I'm sharing it is, when I say that I need to take a balanced view, we do as radio presenters. Having said all of that, would I stand up and say and call out something that's wrong? Absolutely. It would be a sad state of affairs if I was unable to say that I think it's wrong that people are being displaced on anywhere in the world, that young children and their families and their livelihoods are being taken away from them, including their lives. I think that's a matter of fact as well. And it's quite sad. So this I found this interesting. So today, it demonstrates the strength of feeling. So I'm simply conveying an event that is taking place. There is the Millennium Bridge will be lit in the colours of Palestine flag to show solidarity during the week of Eid, which I thought was interesting. And there's a vigil there today from sunset to about 9-10 p.m. on the Millennium Bridge.
Okay.
So that demonstrates that there is quite significant sentiment for particular people and groups. And equally, Jaff, I've been in contact with people in Israel, Jewish people, who I equally feel sad and sorry for. And it is a crazy time. I think the points that you make around rules, regulations, world peace, it's an interesting state of affairs. Anyway, we're going to have someone who's doing a lot for peace and charity and bringing people and communities together on the show in 10 minutes. We've got Nazmin Akthar from Womblebond Dickinson joining us. And they're going to share with us. Nazmin's going to talk about her work around peace and inclusion, and is kindly hosting a roundtable next week from a faith in the workplace. And just on that topic, Jaff, faith in the workplace, what's your view on faith in the workplace?
I think everyone should be, I encourage those that have faith in the workplace, and if they need to adhere to certain rituals in the workplace, then they should have the right and freedom to do that. We do allow people to, if they want to do their prayers, then and it doesn't affect the guest service, and you're able to escape for 5 minutes and inform one of your colleagues that, look, I'm just going to do my prayers, I'm going to be back in 5 minutes, can you cover my station? Doesn't affect the business in any negative way, then we don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, and I think it's that balance and consideration, isn't it?
Yeah, I think ultimately, you're working, and we can't just have someone sitting there and spending 30 minutes doing their prayers, and they work in the bread section, and we have to tell the guests, excuse me, if you don't mind, just one of our lads is just finishing off his prayers. We're just going to your breads are going to be delayed for about 30 minutes. You know, that's not going to quite cut it, you know. Yeah, I think it's ensuring that the business is not impacted in a negative way whatsoever, first and foremost, because it's a place of business. But if you want to, you know, do something spiritual within your time at work, and you do it respectfully, and you get someone else to cover your position, then I think I have no issues with it whatsoever.
And it's the same for any religion, right? If you want to, I mean, what's particularly helpful is that the vast majority of people go to church on a Sunday morning, and that's how the country and Western society was built. You know, as in Sunday was a holy day, and it's quite religious, and it still has that connotation on it. It's a day of rest as well as a day of um, uh, contemplation and religion. But we've been looking at faith in the workplace and even faith more broadly, Jeff. So, one of the features in the newsletter last week was Nipa, who's part of the team here, had written about Eid and the benefits of Eid and the benefits of providing a service to a broader community, and whether that's faith based or not. And the halal pound is worth billions of pounds, you know, as in the vast majority of disposable income goes to leisure and hospitality because people eat. And that was recognized. If you think about, KFC, uh, provides halal. They have certain outlets which are halal. Now, they don't make a big song and dance about it, but they're incredibly popular. It's the same with Nando's. It's like, people go there and they don't mind that the Nando's halal. So the thing with it is very much around, ensuring that there is an opportunity for individuals to um, broaden as a business. It just makes good business sense. And what was recognized is a number of venues. So Newcastle Airport had a multi-faith room. The Marie Curie Centre in Elsick, I remember them opening up a multi-faith room about a decade ago, where it was anybody from any religion could come.
Mhm.
Both my late father, um, may he rest in peace, and my stepmother both passed at Marie Curie. Isn't that interesting that they were both
Mm.
there? I mean, quite probably a decade between each other. But
NUFC have a multi-faith room as well.
they do. So it's nice that they've introduced it, and I think there is a space and a place for faith in the workplace. Um, for me, it's about getting that balance right, is what it is. Anyway, Nazmin is here, so let's just briefly share my screen again so we can do this properly. So inclusion by default is a campaign that we've been running to help make the Northeastern Tees Valley the most inclusive region in the world. And Nazmin's going to be joining us at quarter two to talk about her work. So that's 10:45. And in doing so, highlight the importance of inclusion and how, as an organization, you can use an inclusive innovation framework to make your workplace more inclusive. What it's not about is changing things quite dramatically or drastically. So we're welcoming Nazmin into our virtual space and place. Here's a wonderful picture of you that was produced just for us to say hello. Let's kick off. Good morning, Nazmin. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, Naz.
And thank you. And sorry, Jeff. So Nazmin, let's kick off with an introduction as to who you are, what you do, and why you do it, please?
So I'm an associate at Womble Bond Dickinson. I'm also the co-head of CSR for the Newcastle office, and I'm part of the WBT Reach Committee steering group, and I lead on external events, which means external engagement, networking events, working with clients internally and externally, and promoting our aims of achieving inclusion by default, not just within WBD itself, but also within our external networks, within our supporting our clients to become more inclusive, and obviously wider communities as well.
Wonderful. So forgive me if I call out acronyms or ask you to explain WBD and CSR. I mean, obviously, Jeff and I know what they are, both of those things are, but I think for our listeners and viewers, it would just be really helpful. So WBD.
So WBD is Womble Bond Dickinson, which is an international law firm, but we are obviously one of the biggest law firms based in Newcastle. So we're currently at the Spark. And we the CSR role is the corporate social responsibility activities that WBD carry out, which again is all about community engagement and supporting local causes, whether that's charities or supporting education programs and mentoring schemes. And part of our overall work involves promoting diversity, equality, and inclusion, which our Reach network, so Reach is the network supporting and representing ethnic minority colleagues. They lead on all aspects to do with diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And I suppose listening to all of those things, Nazmin, what does that actually mean? So, what type of things are you doing, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace? I mean, obviously, you're here now having a conversation, which is critical part of any campaign or activity. But if I was listening to this and sort of going, all right, that sounds really interesting, but what difference are you actually making, and what does that translate into?
Of course, and you're right to ask that question, because I know that there is definitely a thought process that a lot of these initiatives, whether that's CSR or diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives, it's all a lot of tick box exercise and it's all hidden within corporate jargon. You know, what's it really doing other than giving social media presence to organizations and companies to say that they're doing something? What real change is happening? Thankfully, WBD, there is definitely a real commitment to change and real positive actions are being taken. When you made a very important point earlier about how we're not talking about making drastic changes overnight. We're talking about making smaller but consistent, systematic changes to support workplaces to become more inclusive to everyone involved, and which obviously will then carry on and cascade to the wider communities, to other workplaces, to other industries as well. So that is our approach of working. And the work we do can range from anything as simple as having an article available on our internal portal to explain what Eid and Diwali and Vaisakhi are about. We've just published a really nice article explaining the significance of Vaisakhi for those of the Sikh faith, and it was written by two of our Sikh colleagues, Jasleen and Ash. And so this is a perfect example of highlighting and celebrating different minority faiths and cultures in a very simple yet effective way. We're also holding events, so we're going to have the Inclusion by Default Roundtable at our Newcastle office next week, where we'll be talking about the hurdles around, supporting those of faith in the workplace, what challenges they might have, how we can support them, make them feel welcome, feel included, feel part of the organisation. So that's an example where we know it'll be individuals from WBD as well as those key stakeholders from across Newcastle region who'll be coming together to discuss that. And that's a way that we'll be sharing good practices, maybe things that aren't going well, things that we need to reflect on. And it means that everyone will be able to learn from one another, but also will be able to go forward and make changes within their own organizations and communities. And we will also be celebrating Muslim Heritage Month, which is has been launched to provide positive storytelling initiative to support and celebrate the achievements of Muslims throughout history, and as well as now, and also obviously tackle issues such as Islamophobia and anti-hate crime. So again, these are different ways that we are supporting one another. And more importantly, I would say, in addition to all of that, we're doing a lot of work from a recruitment point of view, from a retention point of view, to make sure that we are removing all forms of unconscious bias that could exist in our recruitment processes, and also ensuring that we have support schemes in place to support ethnic minority colleagues within the firm, to ensure that they feel, part of it, part of the community, part of the WBD community, and that we are truly living our values of being a place for all.
Amazing. And I think those practical, arguably simple things like having an article online, like sharing perspectives. Here's I don't know if you were listening prior to coming on, Nazmin, but Jalf was talking about his restaurants and the fact that if people want to practice any part of their faith, and the one religion that comes to immediate mind is Islam, right? Because there's strict adherence to praying 5 times a day, and your obligation is to pray at those precise times, at those prayer times, is what is part of your obligation. And I think up until more recently, there were hesitancy, there was those biases, those sort of challenges that exist, and Jalf, being a practicing Muslim and doing so quite significantly, highlighted that there's a balance in the workplace, and I'm looking forward to that conversation next week, because Jalf was just highlighting that, would a customer be prepared to wait 30 minutes for their bread to be made when the curry's being served because the bread chef's praying at that time, or whatever it is? Now, that's not to say in places and spaces where everybody, it's far easier in Muslim countries or Islamic countries, because and just picking up on this, Jalf, I was having this conversation that I'm setting up an office in Saudi. Everyone's been closed down for the last month. And I was talking to someone else here who's doing a bit of business out there. And I was like, I just don't get it. I just don't get why they're not working, and why the country's closed down and whatever else. And I'm like, I even in some of my WhatsApp messages to some significant Saudi Arabians, I'm like, well, I'm still working, when they're saying no one's working and no one's doing anything. And I'm sat there going, well, I'm still working. And during that conversation, they shared with the other entrepreneur from here who runs a lot of events and things like that. He's like, well, Ammar, we don't live in a country where it closes for prayer times, or it closes for for Ramadan, and it does all of these things. We live in a country where everyone's still primarily working and obligated to work. You don't get 30 days off, and then you realize, as a business and as organizations that are set up or helping support other people, imagine telling your clients, Nazmin, oh, I'm terribly sorry. I know you've got a court case, but I'm nipping out. And sorry, Your Honor. It would just it would cause outrage, is what it would. And actually, there's a compatibility point, around this as well. So it's about recognition around that balance, isn't there? It's about making sure that people don't feel alienated or don't feel sort of isolated because they have a particular belief, and whatever that belief is. I mean, I'm picking out on Islam. It could be sexual orientation. It could be, sort of different faiths. It could be even more broadly, some other views that you have or whatever that is. And
You
it's about making sure that you're not discriminating, both either consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said the exact right thing about it being a matter of balance. So, yes, absolutely, you should be accommodating and supportive of your colleagues, but then it does go two ways as well. And ultimately, and to give example as an example, Islam using, yes, there's we need to pray at set times. Some women might also choose to wear a niqab, for example, but there are situations where exemptions apply. If there's an emergency and you can't pray straight away, because there's somebody's life that you need to save, so you're a doctor in a hospital, you can wait. If it's a security issue, so you're a niqabi who wears covers their face, there's a security issue that they need to check your face. You're allowed to do that, and obviously again it's about trying to find a proportionate response. So in the Gabi going through airport security, it would be more appropriate to find another woman to do the checks, for example. So you look for solutions that accommodate everyone's beliefs and needs in those situations. There is no one hard fast rule that, okay, Muslims pray this many times a day and we have to, that is set. There are ways to look at accommodating it. And I think the landscape has changed a lot, especially post COVID, where we are generally more flexible. I mean, I often tell people that, I always do the school run, no matter what day it is, or what's going on. And my colleagues are very supportive of that they all know that I will be unavailable between 3 and 3:30 to go pick up my daughter from school. And that hasn't caused an issue before. We've managed client meetings so that they're either before or after. I've checked with
Yeah.
colleagues beforehand, or it could be that, they go to the meetings instead of me, or, but we make sure that the client, nothing affects client service, and we deliver what we are meant to without it also affecting me or causing me any hurdles. So this is, I'm using flexible working as an example, in terms of like childcare, but actually it applies to everything. And it's all about, working towards each other with an open mind, with a positive
Mm.
approach, not seeing it as, oh, this is a problem I need to deal with, but actually, this is something that we should all be doing. As you say, be inclusive by default from the start and say, how can I help accommodate you, and work together, and then there will be appropriate solutions.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for that, because it's not just purely about faith. It's just about circumstance. It's about family. It's, as in, I have very young children, and feel incredibly guilty that my wife has to do the heavy lifting and everything else. So I try and make sure that evenings and weekends are quite precious and protective of those wherever I can be. But anyway, it's a key consideration. And does it impact the business, and does it have a negative impact on it, and does it I mean, all of the points that you're making are incredibly valid. The other thing to recognize is that society and communities have moved on as well. So practices that were developed however many years ago, they naturally would be modernized with due consideration as to the beliefs behind them. So Muslims are given the opportunity to catch up on their prayers, their missed prayers, and things like that. It is a religion of faith based on repentantness and things like that, and it's recognizing that we're all humans as well. So, and I think what's interesting is having a healthy conversation around it. I think these type of things in particular are incredibly helpful. I love going to the Gurdwara. I enjoyed going to the Mandir, wherever possible. I'll try and visit all places of religion to better understand them and have very open conversations, because it's that lack of understanding. A good friend of mine who's 90 odd now, he's a significant individual. He's got these entrenched views of Islam being radical, and everyone's being radicalized through it. And it's horrific, some of what he comes out with. I mean, it's just so offensive. But I can see where those views are coming from. And you know, and one of the conversations we were having was, well, Ammar, you're a Muslim, you'll have to do what happens, and you know, I can see us fighting each other and whatever. Like genuinely, he's of the view that there's a such division taking place. And I'm like, why do you think that's the case? Because I certainly don't. I'm, first and foremost, you know, I'm here. I was born and brought up here. My, you know, everything that I've done revolves around here. Yes, you know, I have my faith-based views and things like that, but that doesn't prevent me from sort of seeing what I describe as common sense. You know, as the thing. Anyway, I'm conscious of time, Nazmin. Tell us a little bit more. Well, what's your why? Because you do all of these things and you're making such a big difference. Why do you do it?
So ultimately, it's about making the world a better place. And to kind of pick up on what you've just said about, you know, that sometimes there will be opposing views. I think celebrating, you know, our heritage and our cultural diversities is really important. So initiatives like Muslim Heritage Month mean that we can find the common ground. I mean, to give you an example, so that Basaki article I talked about, you know, as I was, you know, talking to my colleagues, Justine and Ash, about it, you know, they were obviously writing from the perspective of Vaisakhi from the Sikh faith, but Vaisakhi or Boishakhi is also relevant to the Bangladeshi community. So as a Bangladeshi Muslim, I relate to it. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, what we do, that's, you know, it's the same event, but we look at it from a different perspectives. And, you know, again, it's similar, like, we were able to see like the commonality despite the different faiths and despite the different ethnicities involved, you know, Punjabi and Bangladeshi. And again, it highlights our, you know, individualities as well. So as a Bangladeshi Muslim, for example, you know, when I wear the red and white sari, people assume that I'm Hindu just because, you know, they associate that more with that faith. But it's like, actually, no, as a Bengali, that's part of my cultural heritage. So it's highlighting those it's highlighting the differences and celebrating them, and that in itself opens eyes to actually the preconceived notions we have about a particular faith or particular race and ethnicity. It's not as simple as that, because we're not just our faith, we're not just our ethnicity or just our profession, we're a combination of all of that together.
Amazing. We're going to get cut off any second, Nazmin. So looking forward to the roundtable next week. And then you're kindly hosting the Curry Club as well, which is a further
Really
celebration
looking forward to
in
that
your
one.
in your wonderful offices, is what you're doing. And then we're going to be doing some joint type of activities around, you know, sharing what you're doing within your workplace so that other workplaces can understand how to apply this type of thing. Because I think the biggest challenge is anyone can pick up a list and go tick, 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 tick. As you say, what they can't do is necessarily change beliefs and behaviors meaningfully. And that comes through shared experiences. So thank you for sharing your experiences. Jalf, we'll be back next week.
Good to see you all. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend. We didn't get the chance to talk about football, Jalf, but we'll have to do that tomorrow, obviously. And until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Thanks, Nazmin. All the best.
Bye.